Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're talking about chapter 14 of the book Right Away and All at Once, which is investing in family and friends, right? Is there a third? Family, friends, and something?
No,
family, friends, and
friends.
Are you sure?
I don't think it's a self-help one. I don't think it's a family self thing. It's just the two other outside
I feel like
things.
there's always a third thing.
Yeah.
Family, friends, something. Yeah. Investing in family and friends. And so true to the nature of the book so far, vacillating back and forth between business focus and personal focus. This one kind of dips back into the personal side of things, maintaining connections, giving back of your time and talent, right? In regards to mentoring and things like that. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, we were just talking about it a little bit before. Like, this felt like just a Cliff Note version of some of the other stuff. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of new, like, juicy morsels to pull from this particular place.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting because, like, said about reconnecting with people that maybe have dropped off versus like. But then, how does it conflict with his idea of like the circles? Because like, does that mean if someone fell off, should have they fallen off, or did they just fall out of touch because of time and life and that kind of stuff? So for that part, it was kind of a little less punchy than some of the other stuff has been. Nothing was bad in it. It's just that it didn't really have anything new to add to the collection, I guess. And it's something that's interesting. I think the only part that he's mentioned now twice in like the last 2 or 3 chapters is about having fun.
Yeah.
I can't, never met this man. I could walk past him in an airport, don't know who he is. He doesn't sound like a barrel of laughs. Like, he doesn't like put a bunch of jokes in his book. Like, he doesn't, he's a CPA by trade. He's a financial guy. Like,
financial.
He doesn't seem like he's going to be wearing a lampshade at a get together. Like, so it's just kind of interesting that he's been throwing this, like, have fun into the mechanism. And the fun part about having fun is it's great, but when you're having a tough time, fun does go lower on the list. When you're winning, everything's fun, but when you're having a tough time, you got to work for the fun a little bit more. It's not just right there on the top of the it's not the cream on top anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I felt the exact same way. I felt like it was all in some way or another things that had already been discussed at a couple of times. And I didn't think it was bad information. I just thought, I didn't make the connection with the circles. That was a really good point because he was talking about like, the professor who kept contact with all of his students and would set up like the meet luncheons and stuff in different cities and things like that. And I was like, man, that seems like pretty extravagant, but I guess when you're dealing with high achievers and Harvard grads and things like that, maybe that's just a different different like level of networking that I haven't been privy to in the past. But I did sort of feel the same way, like, all right, yep, like keep invest in your relationships, invest in your family, and invest your time in the right places. Maintain like everything. Maintaining those relationships takes effort, and you have to be intentional about it. But I did sort of feel like we were kind of just, in some ways, rehashing the same stuff.
Well, not so much. I mean, it is on the chapter, but not so much on the chapter. One of the things that I thought when I was reading that section was Ford uses the phrase a lot, time of life, right? Like where you are in your life. And there's a part of it that I started to think about in this chapter, and I'd sort of considered earlier, which is, did he start to be more intentional about the mentoring and the involvement and the circles and the reaching out to people at the point where he did? Because in his time of life at that point, he had either reached a financial point where there was more assistance to help with kids and family and life and responsibilities, or had the responsibility to the kids lessened, which then allowed him the space to do those things, right? So I know of a couple families that are, have done very well. And they have a significant amount of assistance built into their system. They have drivers and security and housekeepers and nannies and they have all these. So in that sense, I feel like if you were at that level of financial stability, then you could set up things where you want to do that, right? Or if you're getting to the point where you're not going to be tied to having to be at lacrosse 5 times a week. Like as long as you coach, you will. But once the kids graduate and move on, you have ties to wanting to go see Aiden play or wanting to go see Gavin in the city or, wherever Addie goes to school, right? You're going to have all those ties, but you don't have it every single day. Mm-hmm. So at that point, you could network, engage, mentor people because you would have some space in your day that used to be filled with other things. Yeah. So when I was reading it, I started to think about that, not in the sense of, is it like, it was in a sense, is it plausible? Like where in my day would I fit that? Right. Because what I can't do is say, okay, well, I'm only going to work 4 hours every day so that I can take 4 hours, even make it 3 times a week, 4 hours, 3 times a week, where I'm going to go out and just do something that does not generate actual revenue to Berg. And I started to question, is that a flaw in my thinking? That like at what Ford needs that I would do something different and would do that? Or is it where we are as a company and me as a person that I don't have the space to be able to add in to do that based on evaluating what's most valuable, what's most important or urgent? So I don't know. Ford, do you have any sort of thoughts on that?
Well, I've been thinking about this the other side with like, nurturing the relationships or whatever it is. Cause one of my oldest friends, I call him a bunch once every couple weeks, whatever. He's slammed. We might get breakfast every once in a while, but he has kids now that are like 13 and I haven't seen them in probably like, I guess part of it is like, you can when do you realize, or when are you realistic with yourself that relationship is just not going to be either what it was or the other side is not engaging in the way that you are, and you just have to be like, okay, you know what I mean? Like the part of it is like, just keep showing up. That's kind of part of the mantra. Like, you'll be part of it. And then the other part is it's just not there. Like you just gotta call it what it is and, keep tabs from afar because that's just not what the other person wants in the deal too. So it's kind of hard to really, dance through that minefield to understand that like, is it really just schedules? Is it just that, the other person's cool doing what you're doing right now and they aren't trying to strengthen or get more of a relationship? The other thing is that I don't know that like, I think this is where the grain of salt comes in, is that like this guy is close to retirement, I'm assuming, when he's writing this book, right? This is his memoirs of sorts. So like he's in that, in
the twilight.
Yeah, he's in that like, I'm trying to build my legacy and, all that kind of stuff. And I've seen many people do that. I've seen business owners that were jerks to work with and they get close to retirement and all of a sudden they're like grandpa or Santa Claus. They're like wanting everybody to love them again. There's some on social media right now.
A crazy, I have a different crazy analogy, but in a person like Snoop Dogg, right? Like, like Snoop was like, he's everything he was, right? Like, clearly like did the Crip Walk, wore the band, like was this thing coming out of like gangster rap and everything else. And now he's like grandpa. Right? I mean,
he's like, hanging out with Martha
children's
Stewart.
Books, hangs out with Martha Stewart. He's doing like the equestrian things at the Olympics. Like you think about that transition of like, I don't want to say maturing because that assumes that he was immature before. I don't mean it that way, but like changing and developing into something different than you were. That just happens. But the other thing that came to mind as you were talking is one of the things we're dealing right now, Brian and I, Ford knows about it, is we're looking at some items specifically with equipment and depreciation and stuff. And so it's a funny tie, but depreciation bothers me month to month, right? Like we've been talking about it, like how it impacts me at times.
Sure.
But if I didn't look at it that way, right? In the long run, it clearly has to help. That's why it's there. And I sort of think the tie to the friendship thing that like, at some point, the person that you're talking about, and I think I know who it is, right? Their kids will be like Brian's or mine, getting older, and they'll be out of school. And then, maybe you'll be at the right time then, or maybe your kids will be at that window and you won't. But eventually, it's one chapter in the book of that friendship, right? Is that, and that's where I think the intentionalness of of investing in that relationship is, because just because it didn't happen for, a decade, or even if you made it, in other words, like you were probably, if it's who I think, you're probably friends with him for almost 40 years, almost your whole life, but let's say 25 years. And for 15 years of that, it was that you were like thick as thieves. Now for 10 or 15, you might not be as close or interact in the same way. Not close is the wrong word. You won't interact in the same way because of where your lives are with kids. But then all of a sudden, if there's a back end 30 years, it's the same thing. Then for 45 years, this guy was like your partner in crime. You did things, so you think about that. And it's just a chapter. And that's where the depreciation thing just oddly jumped into my head. Like I keep micro focusing on this one little piece of the impact to me instead of looking at the big picture. And then I get aggravated because it's not what I want it to be in that instance.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's just a question of like trying to figure out where that just showing up is being enough, but not trying to be too much, right? Because I mean, like if you read this book, it's like, okay, well, we got to have coffee once a week and we got to, do this, and this. And it's like in this stage of life, maybe one phone call a quarter is what showing up is. It's not that, type of thing.
Yeah. He doesn't say it in his book, but he's clearly in a stage of life phase where he's got that freedom, that flexibility. He talks about getting together with the men's group once a week and like all of those things. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that clearly like the time constraints or the things that you've obligated yourself to and usually in a good way, right? Like church, family, work, etc. Like those things consume a lot of our time right now, especially because of where our family lives are and all of those things. It's tough to say like, I'm going to go once a week and like hang out with the guys and like, I even think about it like the things that each of us like love to do in different ways, right? Like each one of us, I think would say like, if you somehow had a way to build into your schedule where every week you were going to play golf with your friends, like, yeah, each one of us would be like, yeah, but mark me down for that, right? But
then I open my calendar and it's like, I don't think so.
Yeah, where do I fit that 4 hours?
Well,
where do I? Yeah.
And I wonder if, like we're talking both chapters, like because of what he did with this chapter, we're talking about things that were said in 6 different chapters.
That's fair,
right? But the reality is, was it 2-3 years ago when we played golf once a week at like 6:30 in the morning as soon as it opened? And I don't even, did we play 9 and not 18?
We walked 9 holes.
We walked 9 holes.
It was our health thing.
Right. So it was like healthy. We got out, we talked.
Yeah.
And now we say like, we can't find time to do that. Right.
Yeah.
And the truth is we don't make time to do that. Like, I'm not saying I have the time. If you say, do I have the time? I certainly do not.
Yeah.
But if Ford called us both and said, hey, from now on, every Wednesday at 6:30, I want you to meet me here and we're going to do this.
Right.
We'd be like, well, Ford said we got to do it. We got to do it. And and it would be a benefit. But short of one of us doing that, we're just not going to do it. Right. And then we're going to say like, I wish I had time. And that's life.
Yeah.
Right. Like life is, you make time to do the things that you want to do. And then you make excuses for why you don't do the things that you're not doing.
Right.
But the truth is you're not doing them because you don't want to do them bad enough.
Or the things you're told to do.
Well, or the things you're told. You do make time for the things you're told to do.
Yeah.
But I was thinking
By
about
various people.
I was actually thinking about this with Vistage, right? Like, so I was in Vistage, and when I first joined up, and we talked about this before, but like when I first joined up, I was so busy that I was like a day a month to do this professional development thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a day a month. And then I did it, and the lights were still on. You guys were taking care of things. Like it was part of this maturation process that we're going through, but it was also the people that I think need those groups are the ones that are in the weeds and don't have the time for it. So it is that interesting thing, kind of tying back to what you're saying, is that like, how do you, I think it's also tying so attentional to the time you do have so that if we all looked at our days, some people are like, oh, I'm slammed. And then you watch them for a day. Some people, that means that they are doing something every minute. Some people, that means that they're at that place for a certain amount of, you know what I mean? Like they don't even understand what being busy is being at a location for some people. You know what I mean? Like trying to just really, like, I could never schedule myself to 15-minute blocks, but I mean, I know people that do that.
Right. Yeah.
But it's just that, what is busy, or what is, is there downtime, or, I think the other challenge for a lot of people is that, like, that downtime is not scheduled.
Mm.
The guys in the field are waiting on a delivery on a job site. All of a sudden they might have 20 minutes that they can make a phone call home or something like that, or call a friend if they're, or check in or do something else or clean or whatever that is. But that isn't set that time.
Right.
That's just all of a sudden appears in their schedule that wasn't there before.
Yeah,
So
I think we have that too.
I was thinking, have you ever tried to consolidate your stuff so that your
Have a window?
free time is in chunks?
No.
So
is that like defragging a computer, like trying to like push it all so that you have like
a little bit.
I mean, like,
It's
okay, I'm going to slide
it's
all
funny
this.
that Brian's going to.
I'm trying to defrag my calendar. Yeah, yeah. I do it a little bit. I try to like stack things that consume time together, so that I have chunks of time where I don't have. I mean, I still have obligations to fulfill, but I have like bigger windows of dedicated time to do them with fewer interruptions or fewer additional obligations. I try to do that a lot. Actually.
Well, this jumps into something completely different, but it is tied to this. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about getting rid of the open door policy because of the, and that's how we operate, right? I mean, someone comes up and has something and all of a sudden, as far as trying to get done what you're trying to do or focusing, they really say that goes against it because you're in the middle of something. And they say there's ways to do it without like closing the door, but there's ways of being like, hey, not right now, come back in 20 minutes. But usually like, yeah, what do you got going on? Like, I'll drop whatever I'm doing and I'm going to deal with this scenario. And there's been a lot of talk about that. Like the open door policy makes everybody feel like, it's teamwork and all that kind of stuff, which it is, but it's valuing the other person's time because they might be in the middle of doing something and all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're going to pull them and yank them off to do something else.
Yeah.
And so that's always a unique experience.
And it speaks to what we've become, right? Is almost with like political correctness and everything else, like just overly polite, you know what I mean, sort of behavior, which you wouldn't think that we are, but we are so maybe sensitive. I don't have the right word, but I know if I said like, Brian, how you doing? You'd be like, oh, I'm doing good. You could be doing terrible, and you're probably still going to say good because you're not going to say like, oh, terrible. Because who wants to talk to that person? Every time you say like, oh, how you doing? Oh, it's terrible. You know what I mean? Like it's like talking to my mom. Frankly, every time I call her, my mom's like, oh, I had a horrific day, right? And that's all right. I do not subscribe to the political correctness. I'm going to tell you what I think, sort of thing. But it, and so that thing. So when somebody comes in, like sometimes I don't do it anymore. Now I do it with teams, but I would say like, hey, Brian, do you have a minute? And you would almost always say yes. So I had to realize that we talked about it, that I had to change the question and say, hey, can we talk about this in 10 minutes? Because that gives you the option to say, how about 15 or how about 20? Because you really still didn't change it.
Sure.
Whereas if I said, can we talk about this right now? You would just say, yeah, you wouldn't be happy about it, but you'd talk about it.
Sure.
And I might be interrupting you. But the other thing you said about defragging your calendar that I thought is, we said that he's a CPA, right? Like it is in his nature to set these things up this way. And I sort of wondered if you would get there because I feel like it's in your nature to be this way, to be more intentional and to set things up and to say like, I'm going to talk to this person once a quarter. And like, not that you would, maybe you'd put it on a calendar. I don't know. But in other words, like, whereas I wouldn't do that. I would, but we are so, we've been together for a decade, right? So like, I also know that you like to buy presents just spur of the moment, like, because you see somebody and you think of something and you're like, so that goes against that idea. Whereas I think like he would say like, I buy a present when it's on my schedule, got to buy a present, right? So like if you live that way, then it's easier to devote your time that way.
This guy with the books he sends out, you definitely know he's figuring out whenever Barnes and Nobles has a sale and buying all of them then. That's just the way
everything
he
is
operates.
scheduled. Whereas like for me, it wouldn't.
He's got his Barnes and Nobles points or something.
Exactly.
He's cashing them in. Yeah.
People are like, what is Barnes and Nobles?
I don't know
like,
that we've talked about investing in family and friends at all here, but I mean,
I think so.
I think we're talking around, what we want to do. And
I think the other part is it in this chapter or somewhere that he just says like family is like, that's what it is. Like there is no like escaping that.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to say that like, I don't subscribe to that theory directly. Like, my immediate family, yes, but like extended family, I don't really have that, tie, because I've seen a lot of people, they're my second cousin and they're having issues. We're going to still, it's like, no, you still got to stand up and be a good human being. If you're not, then the blood doesn't, what's the thing? Blood run thicker than water type scenario. Water. And it's like,
So
to me, that doesn't work that way. I mean, within into the immediate nucleus or like one tier out, yes, but once it gets past that, it's just kind of
so I have an interesting question with the specifically the family idea, and you could apply it to friends, but I think friends is simpler because you build those circles, right? But the family thing that's been interesting to me is I grew up. My mom's Italian, my dad's Irish. It was virtually dominated by my mom with the Italian side of the family. Everything we did was there. And that was this scenario where I think about it. And, if we have a party and we're going to invite people, there's going to be a lot of people coming from my side of the family, specifically that side of the family. So half of my family, that will go out 2 or 3 circles that I would consider like, I can't not invite them. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like I don't want to. I mean, like if you said like, okay,
be offended if you didn't get
right,
to come.
it would be rude and it would be offended, and it goes out. You're talking like my mom's cousin. Like if I didn't invite Gia, I would have been. I'm just obnoxious. Like Gia would invite me, so that thing. But I have found that it's been interesting as I got married and had kids. Like how I pulled back to say like, okay, in my world. The way I think, I always say like who I protect, right? Like the innermost circle of people is who I protect all the time.
Yeah.
And on my family side, so that changed, right? So you have your own family. So now like it's your job. My job is to protect this group of people, these 4 other people. And that doesn't mean I don't protect other people, but it changed who I was protecting. And I know that I do that with everything. Like I do it with work as well. You know what I mean? Like Ford is clearly inside the circle. Like if anybody tries to get to Ford, they'd have to come through me to get to him because he protected me. I'm going to protect Ford. That's where we are. But I wonder your take on that as both of you had kids, and you had kids younger. Ford, you had kids older like I did. Yeah, but did you feel that same thing that sort of as your family developed, what did that look like?
Yeah, I think similar, except not as big of a circle ever. And it's probably just the nature of how I grew up. So like, growing up in like Southern California, like I was always like, we're always like cordial with family, but not ever close with a family outside of my immediate circles. Right. So like obviously parents, siblings, grandparents, that's all been like close my whole life. But like beyond that, like, I see my aunts and uncles sporadically. My cousins like never. Like all those like every like layer beyond sort of my parents and my grandparents. It's never been super close. So like I just don't have that like experience now. Now I see it for sure because I actually like interestingly enough, Allie's family is very similar to yours. Italian mom, Irish dad, and the Italian, Seattle side dominates everything when it comes to family gatherings and things of that nature, and not in a bad way. It's actually it's awesome. I do love it. Allie thinks that it annoys me, but I think it's fun. But big, everyone's invited. Like we always go to like. We all go to the lake house over the summer. But like one weekend a year, everyone's invited. And it's like, 37 people inside of a home that's, was built a long time ago. And it probably comfortably houses 5.
So, got people sleeping on the floor, huh?
Everywhere. Yeah. But very similarly, I've always had like, the people I protect. Now, interestingly for me, like extensions of that have become the places I've invested my time. And so like, they're not my kids, but I'm always very protective of the kids I'm coaching who have the right attitudes, have the right work ethics, have the the desire, things like that. I'm always like super protective of them. So on the field, in the classroom, all of those things. And so I think, like, interestingly enough, like, I think it is in some ways similar to what he's saying in the book about like choosing where you invest your time and then like clinging to those things and like you're suggesting, sort of they're who you protect, and that becomes your circle. So yeah.
Do you think it's a generational thing a little bit too? I mean, when I was a kid, like every Christmas we had to get together with family we only see once a year. We traveled to Heston, Kansas because there was relatives supposedly living out there. Like, as a kid,
did you
right?
find them? You say supposedly.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know. I see them once a year. Like, I mean, they're like
he saw people he was told he was related to.
Yeah,
You're related.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, it just didn't really have that thing to me. And then it kind of fell off, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And I'm no interest in renewing that type of scenario. But I have a buddy who there is, I'd say, at least 4 weekends a year where he'll disappear because his families have reunions. So he has his two parents' family reunion. His wife has their two family reunion. We're talking like they're renting out, you know, I don't know, some kind of like park for the weekend. Like there's that many people that come to these things. And, you know, you kind of laugh about it because whatever, that's like, oh, we're going to this one, you know, because you find them when it's, you know, inopportune times over the summer or whatever, you want to do something else. But, you know, I just don't have that. And I'm fine with it. I guess it's just a question for the next generation. Like if that's something that they will find important and will it be available to them, you know, me opting out of that. I'm not really opting out because I don't even know if they still have these events, but you know, if the next generation wants to make those reconnections, is it even going to be out there for them to do their connecting?
Well, so it's funny you say that. So, well, first, you're the oldest, Bri? Right. And so all three of us are the oldest. Mm-hmm. So I think there's something that happened at least for me as the oldest, because I'm also the oldest of all cousins. Like I am the oldest of my generation in my family.
So you got to be the organizer if you want this to happen.
Right. So by default, I like end up being the organizer, and my personality leads to that as well. Cause I don't want to plan, but I will just spur them and say like, we're going to do this and people listen. Yeah. So I find Ford knows like, we don't have like reunions, but like there are probably 5 times a year that we are all going to be together. And when it's like, you know, all of my cousins, all, you know, and even like when we go, we've been out to Ohio a couple of times to look at different opportunities that we didn't do. And every time I'm out there, I see my cousin who lives in Ohio. Like I make a point that if I'm coming through, I'll stop and have dinner with her. Mm-hmm. So I think we still do have that. And I mean, it's happening right now. So Easter's coming up. And I don't know, Saturday or Sunday, all soccer got canceled, which never happens. The girls played on grass, which never happens. And it poured, so they canceled it. So we had a free Sunday. We almost didn't know what to do with ourselves because like we just started working, like I was cutting down trees but we generally don't have time. And all of a sudden Erin was like, hey, we don't have a plan for Easter. And we had thought about a couple different things. And she was like, and nobody's called us, which is par for the course for my family. No one's going to call because I didn't make a plan. Like, I have to initiate the call, but we will assume that through my poor planning, which you're very familiar with, I will have a plan. You just have not been alerted to the plan. So I like talked to a couple of them. They were like, well, we assumed we were coming to your house. And I was like, yeah, I sort of assumed you would assume that you were coming to my house because
I came to that conclusion.
Right. I mean, and it's probably the correct conclusion, which as Erin CPA, that drives her nuts. There's no plan.
She doesn't. Yeah.
She does not. And she's an only child. So, but like you said about really enjoying it, she really enjoys my side of the family, but she also does acknowledge that it turns into complete chaos. You know, like when, you know, the week that there's a few weeks that people will rent down the shore and they rent all around us. And so there'll be, you know, 20, 30 family members all at the shore and my cousins' kids and my kids. So you're talking, like you said, like you're talking, I don't even know what the second cousin, first, I don't know what it is, but you know what I mean? Beyond cousins that are like their, you know, first cousins that see each other because they see each other a fair amount. They're going to see each other at the Halloween parade and, you know, at Christmas and Easter and all these different things. So I think it's valuable because I think it grounds, it gives you some sense of purpose, but in a really odd tie to the reunion thing. So my great grandma, Pauline, her side of the family, apparently, and my mom went to it, they hadn't been to it in like 30 years. They still have reunions twice a year. And there's like 400 people there. Like they rent out huge halls, and it's like, and my mom was like, I'm going to go, but I mean, I haven't seen these people in like 35 years, like Ford said. And she said they went, and it was like they just like threw a light switch, like, oh, I remember the last time I saw you and you were like 18. You know what I mean? Or they were probably like 30. Maybe it was 50 years, because I think she was like, you know, I was probably born. But like how odd that is because, you know, it's just odd. It's amazing when people do that with families.
Right.
I don't know that I have the bandwidth or the energy to do that, but I certainly do feel like I am the organizer. And you know, we'll do that with my side of the family and put it together, and just, it is what it is. So.
Yeah. I think it, like, the one thing that going through this chapter at least continues to remind me of is how intentional you have to be if you want things to matter. And I think that, like, the busyness of life makes that difficult at times. Like we usually respond and react to whatever's in front of us. So being intentional enough to continue to make things matter when they're not right in front of you.
And they're not required.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point. That's probably like the biggest takeaway for me from the chapter.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, for me, the biggest thing was that I love that book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm going to have to make it. I need a trigger.
Right.
Right. I need something that's going to trigger me to do that. And so whether I use holidays or the seasonality of the beach or skiing or any of those things, is that I realize that that's the best mechanism for me, is that if I make a trigger that will do it, then I'll do the thing because I've been moved to do it. And the question becomes, can I shift to a model that doesn't require the trigger, whereas I just plan it, you know, and I don't know if I will or won't, but I think that's what the book suggests, that your best chance is if you are intentional about it and you value it. And that's where I feel like it's a rehashing of 4 or 5 different chapters, because it's just trying to establish that it's not going to happen if you don't make it happen. If you don't plan to invest in your family and friends, then work and life and sports and everything else is going to take over and drive, because, as you said, you like read and react. Right. So that's what you're going to do.
Yeah. That's a good place to wrap it up. So thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you got something from this episode, and we hope you come back for another one.